I'll be damned, the comments were right. It is based on the Sturm Tiger.
Okay, Brad, I'm ready to record.
This oversight is gonna cost me all of my internet gun nerd cred.
Can you loosen up the chains though? They keep getting picked up by the microphone. Brad? Brad?
Oh shit! How's it going? I didn't see you there.
Are you slowly being eaten inside over the fact that you get some facts wrong in your podcast about plastic toys again?
No? Screw it. Just let's call Eric and get this thing started.
Okay, but let's not forget the chains.
Hello and welcome to the Warhammer Podcast, episode 108. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
And with us is Berilio as punishment.
Hello.
As punishment.
So, this episode was supposed to be something else, but we would have had to record it later in the week. And would you believe this? Berilio asked for Sunday off this week. Who gets Sunday off?
I don't know, especially a Sunday that, has some importance. That's wild.
So we're going to do another in the, series now of building up your first faction from 0 to 2,000 points. Originally we did Cactar's Tau, where we walked through, me and him going through a 0 to 2,000 points of Tau. This time we're going to do Death Guard because that's the faction Berilio likes.
In preparation for this episode, I didn't take shower for weeks.
Method acting.
And on that note, let's get into this.
Sounds good.
All right, so welcome to this week's episode of Speed's Gaming Corner. Or more seriously, we're going to continue the series now of us attempting to build up a first army for somebody.
Yeah, so how do you go from 0 to an army, essentially, 2K or more?
So we're looking at Death Guard as the specific example this time, but hopefully there's a lot of lessons we can give you along the way. And I think with this, we should just assume your first purchase is always the Combat Patrol, even though the Death Guard Combat Patrol is pretty famously not good. But we should still assume it's what you started with. It is still a discount box and all that.
Also, skin tones are hard to paint, and Death Guard Combat Patrol has a lot of Foxwalkers.
You are correct. It's less bad than historically. What you were thinking of was when Games Workshop was giving a reason for why to move from the Empire in Fantasy to Stormcast in AOS. And the reason is humans have trouble with skin that doesn't look right. Like a badly painted human face looks far worse than some badly painted armor.
It's too easy to hit the Uncanny Valley area.
And you end up with like the Kill Me Space Marine.
And it's just one of those that, if it's done poorly, it's easy to see across the table.
Yes. It stands out more because faces is one of the first things you look at on a model.
Exactly. But if there's a helmet or there's power armor or whatever, it's they all kind of blend together without picking out specifics.
Yeah. But again, historically versus in this specific scenario, a lot has been updated. Contrast paints exist now in GW's line of paints. There are alternatives in other lines. They make skin and stuff a lot easier. And then we get into also their zombies.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about Uncanny Valley as much. They already look like cartoon zombies.
Yeah, we can paint the skin purple or green.
Right.
Literally in our play group, our Death Guard player, he had 80 Poxwalkers and he just speed painted them with, technically I think it was the speed paints. It may have been a bit of the Vallejo line too. But anyway, he just contrast painted them up. And he did them in wacky colors. Some of them had blue, some of them had purple, some of them had brown versus green versus they just colors for the skins to make them a big cartoony blob. And then he unified them with pants and stuff. But it looks good for a quick and dirty speed paint job. It's good enough because they don't have to look fully human.
And that's another thing is these are also Poxwalkers. They're a blob. So you don't have to get super detail. You can if you want or whatever, but you don't have to worry as much about make each and every individual model look good and perfect on its own, because it's just you're going to have them on the table and it's going to be a blob and they just need to look good enough at that point, which honestly is a good starting learning point for doing skin contrast and stuff like that, because if you screw up, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, knowing that you don't have to go into details and you just have to get used to the paints.
Yeah, it's nice to learn that lesson on something that's not important. Make your bad models your bad paint jobs. use. It's fine.
That's a good way of learning so that when you get to the characters or the I want to make this captain special, whatever it is, okay, you've gone through the failures.
Yeah, you now know how to like thin your paint and how to control your brush better and stuff like that because you've done your practice boys.
Yeah. So, I mean, starting with the combat patrol, I think is the general starting point that most people, that's just an easy intro point of, I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh, here's the box that's a value box that is targeted for new players, essentially.
Yeah, and it's got rules for the combat patrol game mode, so you've got that as a super starting point, and then you can build off of that. It's a perfect start. It's about 300 points. I think it's like 305. You get a lot of baseline troops to play with, and then you have Typhus, who is a named character, which is why we're not going to buy a second copy of this box ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a issue if you got two of them. It's just you're not really getting value out of it, so...
Yeah, your second Typhus could be used as a basis to modify into a custom Demon Prince later if you've got a bunch of other bits laying around, or turning him into a more generic character of some type, like just a Chaos Lord of some type. You probably trade out his unique weapon and don't do the Living Hive on his back and some other stuff. There's stuff you could do, but the point is, it's not what you're probably doing in your first 2,000 points.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're just getting into it, buying one combat patrol, building it, doing some initial painting, figuring out if you actually enjoy the hobby at all is probably the right way of doing it instead of, I'm going to go out and buy all kinds of shit. Oh, I don't actually enjoy this hobby. Or I don't like this army.
It's true.
You know, it's one of those that like, this is a good, buy this box, try it out, see what happens.
So from here, obviously, we still want to build up into like a first 500 points, right? So we've got like 200 left to play with, and we want a little more variety. So let's do something that is not just a baseline troop looking thing.
Before we move on to other models, let's understand this combat patrol. Typhus is a leader that works only with Poxwalkers, basically, right? His ability is Poxwalks related, he revives them.
Yes, everything about him, he wants to essentially play him plus 20 Poxwalkers that he's leading.
And is this only a 10th edition thing, or...?
This is his 10th edition identity. In 9th, it was a different setup, but Poxwalkers will always be useful because they are your backpoint cheap holder at worst. Currently, they also have the nice trick with putting 20 of them with Typhus is actually a really fun blob to shove up main board and just swamp an objective to hold it all game.
Yeah.
But that's a nice secondary use for him. It's not like it's bad.
And like Typhus is one of the key character kind of things, so like it's unlikely he'll be terrible. Like there might be times where it's like, oh, in 11th he's not quite so good, or he gets, you know, whatever, but like it'll always be playable just because there's only like a handful in Death Guard. So like the future proofing idea, the combat patrol is giving you what you need as a core for Death Guard.
Because other than Typhus and the Poxwalkers, we only get a few Marines, so we kind of have to fill a lot in the army, like vehicles and whatever else, because we don't have variety in this combat patrol, right?
Correct. So, and again, we're still quite shy of 500 points, so if we're looking at like a 500 point break point for your first starting off collection, I would say let's finish it off with like a bloat drone and a blight hauler.
I was gonna say at least get a blight hauler.
You know, little light vehicle. He's cute. He's got a little face. The Death Roomba.
It's gonna give you that other little bit of the army kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a nice look if you take the combat patrol, you throw a blight hauler and a bloat drone to the two sides, and you get some variety of some wacky looking corrupt vehicles. You definitely feel Death Guard's identity with this first 500 points. And it comes in at almost exactly. It's 495 from what I've got calculated here on the side.
Yeah, and that's nice that it's under 500.
Yeah, it's a very nice little balanced first look at an army, and then we can grow out from here. And an important part of these is we tend to try with your first 2,000 points to get a taste of a lot of sections of the army, because you'll eventually grow beyond your first 2,000 points in an army. You'll get to a point where you have a collection and you build your 2,000 point lists out of it.
With some exceptions of Votann at the moment.
Sure. Ignoring little stuff.
Eventually, Warhammer is a long-term hobby. You're not playing this for 6 months and then off it goes to the next thing.
You won't be done painting these in 6 months. I will bet you money.
Yeah, it's one of those, you're going to have more than 2,000 points at some point.
So moving on from the first 500 points, we want to get some more variety in here. We only have the one character, and he's a named character at that. So we definitely want another character in this next 500 points minimum, maybe two of them. So I guess, Berilio, do you have preferences that we can build off of for the next characters?
I do have some preferences, but they are not based on gameplay. They are mostly based on the models I like aesthetically.
That is absolutely a fair way to start off. You don't know gameplay yet. You're new to the game. This is your first army. Grabbing things that look cool first and building off of those, and then later on you'll figure out which parts of the army you really like to play. That's part of this first 2,000 points being a bit of a taste test into all parts of the range, and then you start feeling out your actual identity within it on what you really love.
So, like, what was your personal take on character stuff?
Two characters that I like very much are the Lord of Contagion and Noxus Blightbringer.
Okay, so if we're looking to get a Lord of Contagion into the list, Lord Velthius is a Lord of Contagion model that you can still buy because the generic one that used to be a thing in 8th edition was part of a weird sprue. You can't buy it right anymore. So we would grab Lord Velthius, who actually comes with like 3 extra Blightlord Terminators, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, the tainted cohort.
But that's just a Lord of Contagion datasheet wise, and we've got 3 extra Terminators hanging around. And then if we want to do a Blightbringer, we can do the Chosen of Mortarion and actually round out quite a few characters because we're going to get the Plaguecaster as well. And now we've got 4 whole characters to play with. We've got a spare, like, the Plague Marine Champion is just like a sergeant. And we've got 3 spare Blightlord Terminators, so we've actually got some stuff to play with later when we're building kits, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely stuff to be done with just having extra bits and models and stuff like that. But yeah, those are some pretty decent character, like, options, essentially.
And importantly, now we have variety in our characters. We can go the more magical route by taking Typhus and the Plaguecaster. We can go the opposite direction with a Blightbringer and with the Lord of Contagion. And nicely, this does let us waltz our way into what I consider the coolest part of the army, which is some Terminators.
And you guys asked me about the characters, but I also would like to paint a Plague Burst Crawler. But since we don't have the discount box for 10th edition yet, I would wait on buying that because looks like the kind of model that would go in a discount box eventually.
No, it won't.
No, it won't?
It seems unlikely.
That's been the problem with the 10th edition combat patrols. They've all been taking the vehicles out.
Okay.
I mean, it should. It absolutely should. And if we were making them, it would go in there. But
I think if I had to build one, the Plague Burst would be the one I keep out, and I would put the Blight Hauler and the Bloat Drone in because they have more of the creepy, gross identity to them to really show to a new person.
Oh yeah, the Blight Hauler is like one of the top Death Guard models. He is so cool. But
I really think most people think of that when they think Death Guard stuff because a lot of people paint it with the glowing eye and all that.
yeah, but the Blight Hauler I would paint early, but the Plague Burst seems like a model that would go eventually in a 2K list.
Yeah.
And I would pick up after 1K probably.
Let's get some Terminators in here first, and then we'll see if we've got room for the Crawler at 1K.
Okay.
And then we'll have a nice variety. It is important, go with your gut. Don't worry too much about the order of things. If you have models that are your favorite, don't be shy about putting them in first, even if, there might have been a slightly wiser order to things. It in the grand scheme will not matter.
no, especially when you're just starting out, it's going to be more about learning how to play than the models being a tuned list. That's just how it's going to be, kind of thing. As you play, hopefully you have the ability to continue to tweak and play new things, essentially, but don't worry about winning so much on your first few games. Play the things that are fun and look cool.
Worry more about learning your army.
Yeah.
So I do want to have the first thing we grab be like 5 Blightlords just because we got the extra 3 with Felthius. And while in 10th edition it's only smart to run on the 5s, with just how it's set up right now.
Yeah.
These extra 3 mean that now we can, when we build these Terminators, build all of the special weapons we want and have the ability to run basically any 5 in a loadout that's possible.
Yeah.
So we can run one with the autocannon cannon, one with the plague spewer, and not have to worry too much, because if we don't want those in a game, we can swap them out for one of the 3 spares that came with Felthius's kit.
Right. And I mean, it's also just nice to have extra models for kit bashing if you wanted to do anything like that. Or, you know, God forbid it happens that you really screw up a model. Here's your replacement kind of thing.
Or you lose 3 Tomb Blades. We're not getting into that story.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not getting into that story today.
No, that's another time. But, you know, it's one of those, like, it's kind of annoying that you're getting 3 when you would play 5, 10 in current 10th, but you're going to have uses for it. And I think the Terminators look cool. So, I mean, it's a pretty core part of the army to me.
Yeah. And so at this point, we're at like 855 for points. So let's throw the Plague Burst in there. We technically go over in points, but that's because we were running every of the 4 character options. This lets us have 1,000 points and get to pick and choose which characters to run in which game. So we throw the Crawler in, and now we've got a very nice variety. This means your first 1,000 points covers the vast majority of the army. And I think by 1,500 points, we can grab the last couple key models, and we'll see where we go from there.
Key models, are we talking Mortarion?
So... should we do this conversation? All right, we need to talk about my thoughts on Primarchs.
I mean, whenever you guys talk about demons, you guys say that the model that basically pulls people for that section of the army is one of the greater demons, right?
It is absolutely true.
And the same is kind of true to the Primarchs on the Chaos Legions, like Mortarion and the guy with the nipples, the horn nipples.
Magnus nipples.
So you look at some horny nipples and you get pulled to it. So
yeah. It is very true. They are centerpiece models.
So here's my thing. I love Primarchs. I love centerpieces, greater demons, all that stuff. But I think a piece of advice for new people. They're great. Absolutely buy them if you like them. When you're playing your first games, models like these that are 300 plus points are balance-wise a pain. They can be very awkward in your first few games.
Especially when you're not playing 2K. Your first few games, you're probably playing 500 or 1,000, hopefully, if you're playing a Primarch or Greater Demon. But even at 1,000, these are a third of your list in one model.
Yeah, Mortarion is literally over a third of your list at 1,000 points.
if you're playing with Mortarion, you are putting a lot of eggs in a basket.
Well, it just warps the entire game around that specific model.
Exactly. It becomes a check of, can you deal with my big centerpiece model? If you cannot, then I'm going to run around the board and blow stuff up with it. If you can, then you blew up a third of my army, and now we're playing 2/3 of an army versus a full army.
Yeah. And I mean, there is more to it than that. Like, at a certain point, you gain the experience and knowledge that you can play around those things. You know, it's one of those where it's like, oh, I'm not going to pass that stat check, so I'm going to play to the points, and I'm going to do secondaries and all that kind of stuff. But, like, that's not a thing when you're just starting. Basically, when you're just starting, you're still figuring out the rules and smashing your models into the opponent's models and shooting them. So, like, these types of centerpiece models look awesome, but they can cause balance problems, and there can be more negative emotions when it comes to these. So you just have to be careful.
And that's why I don't have too much issue with us putting him in at 1,500 points now, where, like, okay, there's a reasonable expectation that your opponent can deal with Mortarion, that he's at risk, that now you have to play him smart. It's still a very big chunk of your early points that you've collected in a single model. Ideally, I would say you get to a point where you have 2k points in your collection plus Mortarion, so that you gain the ability immediately to play with Mortarion or not deal with having to play with Mortarion. And the more you play with large models like this, the more you'll understand that idea. Sometimes having to babysit Magnus can be unfun. If Magnus dies and I lose almost a quarter of my list, it's really awkward. So I end up having to play around my Magnus. Everything is about, comboing off with my Magnus and stuff.
And that can be unfun to play against as well.
Yeah, especially every game. Like, once in a while, totally fine.
Oh, absolutely.
Every single game, if it's like you and your friend getting together, learning the game, it can be very samey when these large models have such a high impact for either of you.
Yeah, if you're jamming like one or two games every 2 months. You want the games to be enjoyable. You can't have a very skilled game of you either stomp or get stomped.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with us putting Mortarion in here. I was going to wait till we hit the 2K and make him our Celebration 2K mark. But if you're jonesing for Morty in your early collection, then alright, we go with it, and we'll just deal with it. We're over 1,000 points, it shouldn't be too bad.
I mean, also, it's always fine to delay painting those models, because
True.
you want them to look cool. So the more you learn about painting, the better.
At the same time, don't ever feel frightened of it. It's really not that bad. I would argue, as someone who has painted a lot of large models are easier to paint than small models because you have a larger canvas. Because by and large, painting in miniatures is a coloring book, and you just have larger spaces to color in. So you have less issues with screwing up.
It's easier to hide the mistakes as well.
True. So yeah, all right, we can throw Morty into our 1,500, and we're over halfway to 1,500 from 1K now.
I think that one of the things that's nice about that, if we have like 1,500 points-ish and we have a Mortarion, if there comes a point where it's like you and your buddy are playing and it's like, yeah, we're kind of getting sick of this Mortarion just being the game, just drop down to 1,000 and play without him. Like, you can still have a fun game at that point and do something different. So
let's just finish it off with another 120 points, and we get like right up to 1,500 with some Death Shroud Terminators, because they're a more bodyguard type Terminator unit.
they're the like fancy elite kind of thing. So they're 3 and 6 instead of 5 and 10, I think.
Yes, and they've got their big fuck off scythes.
I think they're cool.
So that gets us what I consider to be like one of the last major draws of the army here into the list. So now we're at 1,500 points. You've got your Morty, and we can try finishing off going up to 2K.
Yeah, I mean, grab like a Rhino, Land Raider, like...
I actually think if we're going in Death Guard, Rhinos are good because by this point you're aware of the fact that Death Guard is slow.
Yeah.
So the mobility of some vehicles is nice.
Mm-hmm.
You're also at the point now where you may want to double up on something that you found out you like. We're going to avoid doing that for this example, but this is where you have to be able to take over and know what you want. You've probably been playing for a couple months now.
You've got a decent range of characters, infantry, some tanks, some centerpiece model, like whatever. You have an understanding of this is what I want to do.
Yeah, at this point you've read your codex, you may go, damn, I really want to get the Tally Man this time because he's going to be perfect rules-wise with my Plague Marines. I don't actually know the Tally Man's current rules, but I'm just going to assume that's the case.
He gets some CP.
Oh yeah, he's still just a CP engine. Okay, yeah, so he's just always good. So we may want to just grab some more Plague Marines here too, for a safety standpoint. Start building out having some more infantry. Because at 2,000 point games, controlling the board does require you have footprint. So let's say a Rhino for some mobility. Let's grab another set of Plague Marines while we're here so that we've got a little bit more bodies on the board. We've got tons of points left still. If we want now, we could do like a Demon Prince to get the last of the big characters.
Oh, since you mentioned the Demon Prince, let's say I want to paint something different.
Okay.
Can we soup something easily?
Yes. So currently in 10th, you can soup demons in Death Guard, and it works out. It is a fine thing to do.
Is there a model that is always good to have so you have the option to soup?
Yeah, the answer is unfortunately competitively always Nurglings.
Yeah.
Death Guard kind of relies on them as the mobile upfront unit so that they cover Death Guard's weakness. They're adorable units.
So let's be honest though, Nurglings are cool anyways, so like ignoring potential like competitive play, they're still cool to have Nurglings in your Death Guard army.
Yeah, we could definitely go the demon route to finish us off. Grab like a Demon Prince, some Nurglings, and just some Plague Bears or something basic, right? And now you can build up both your Death Guard and your Nurgle demons. Maybe grab a Great Unclean one later.
A Beast of Nurgle?
Yeah, they're so cute.
Yeah.
Dude, Beasts of Nurgle are like, they're so goddamn adorable. I have a couple downstairs, and that model is like still my favorite part of Nurgle. Anyway, we could go that route. We could continue with Death Guard to 2K, then start, okay, instead of going past 2K with Death Guard, let's start sprinkling in some Nurgle demons, and then we'll see where I want to go from there.
Wait, before that, since we talked about demons in Death Guard, how about AOS?
Oh... This gets into like the double pivot of if you were trying to do that, the way I would handle it currently, we have to see AOS 4 this summer if it'll change anything. The way I would currently handle it is you start pivoting into demons so that you have your demon splash at 2K here in Death Guard, and then you build up your demon collection, move towards AOS, and then build up the mortal AOS characters from there. And to be honest, the Blight Kings and Blight Lord Terminators and Death Shroud Terminators do look a lot alike. At a casual level, I'm absolutely sure that anyone would be fine with you playing those as the Blight Kings temporarily while you build up your collection. Totally fine, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a larger topic that we'll probably do more in depth in the future of like, hey, I want to play both, or I want to be able to play both and figure out which one or whatever.
Yeah, or just wanting to test the other game. It could be a very near future episode. Very near. Very
Wow.
near.
The Chaos has a nice, easy pivot of, going to demons, and demons are in AOS. And honestly, a lot of the good demons are from AOS. So... like looks wise, but it is nice that there's a pivot from Death Guard into demons into AOS demons, that kind of stuff, so you're not like locked in.
So the transition is kind of smooth. I don't have to worry about it as long as I'm getting one of each cool model.
Yeah, that's a fine way to make your way over to AOS if you're going the demon route. There's no real trap there. It's pretty much the same rules as 40k of grab some character ones, grab some troop ones, grab some elite ones, ta-da, you have an army.
Fair.
The only potential issue being like if you really liked the tank models in Death Guard and you were all in on that, well, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, King of Nurgle doesn't have that.
Yeah, so not that that's a showstopper or anything, it's just, your core Death Guard stuff and the core demons, that'll all work well together, so no major issues.
So let's do this. Let's count up. We'll go 2k to Death Guard, and then we'll do a quick 500 points of demons as a bonus round to show the alternative way you could go or what you do next if you wanted to add in from there.
All right.
So let's do the Rhino, the Plague Marines. Let's slap in another character. Why not the Tallyman? We just talked about him. Throw him in here.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Is there anything else that you like on this page we don't have yet?
You could always take a look into the Hellbrute.
You could get a Defiler. Everyone loves the Defiler.
Everyone loves the Defiler.
The Defiler?
The thumbnail for the worst model ever that we did.
Oh.
Your opinions on that model? Oh. Let's do the Hellbrute. That's a fine one. And then let's grab a Sorcerer Lord and Terminator armor maybe. Have all of our options open for the more psychic heavy route if we want to do that. I don't know. We finish it off with one last Blight Hauler. Maybe go for a cutesy double Blight Hauler.
Okay. 2 Blight Haulers sounds good.
How many Plague Marines do you have?
There's 2 sets of 7 here, plus the Terminators then and all that. Oh, and since we actually luck out a little bit here, because of the extra Sergeant in the Chosen Immortarian kit, we actually have 15 of them. So we could run a 10-man and a 5. So you could put 10 in the Rhino with a character or whatever, and then you could have 5 holding a back point. We actually have some variety in our Plague Marines right now.
Yeah.
I was going to say the Biologus Putrifier, but he is in the Combat Patrol, right? Yeah, he is. Okay.
Oh, he is in the... I haven't had him in the list this whole time. Whoops. And then we remember that we've had a Biologus Putrifier the whole time that hasn't been in this entire episode. Whoops. I forgot he was in the Combat Patrol. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, he blends in with the Plague Marines.
So yeah, we have a lot of options now. I totally had forgotten he was in there. He's just been hiding off to the side this whole time. Why didn't you paint him till now? Jeez.
I mean, that is one of those, like, the base units, the Plague Marines, have a good amount of detail, so some of the, like, characters don't stand out quite as much when you're just glancing.
It is true. As someone who plays against Death Guard, it is one of my complaints that's minor.
Your base units are too cool.
Plague Marine characters don't stand out from Plague Marines. So that does give us just shy of the 2k point line, so we probably have to start making choices at this point if we want to take enhancements and take a character or something out, or some of the Poxwalkers, whatever we end up doing. So there we go, 2k points without any demons. But now let's do 500 points of demons and add them in as a bonus round. So the easiest pivot for me is to say, let's just grab a Demon Prince, because both there is the Death Guard Demon Prince and the Nurgle Demon Prince that's a Chaos Demon unit, and they're the same model. It's the same thing depending which faction you put him in. So it's a great crossover.
You can rip those wings off and spend more points, I think.
No, it's less points in this army.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's an army dependent thing, and it's a whole.
I just remember that there is the like rip the wings off and it's more expensive.
Oh, the wings off is okay. When you get to demons, the wings off is the cheaper of the two. But in Death Guard, the wings on is the more expensive because it's mobile.
That makes sense, yeah. But you do bring up a good other way of doing it of the Great Unclean One.
Yeah, maybe not in the first 500 points. We make that the next mega model that we buy afterwards.
Yeah, but it's so cool, man.
I know.
I could be convinced to go that way, but it's probably not the optimal way.
So let's throw in a Demon Prince to start with.
And you got Nurglings.
Obviously, yeah. Wait, honestly, what's in the... Oh, they changed it for AOS. Damn. So AOS, they had the old start collectings. Long missed now. But now I think the new version... Yeah, the new version has mortals in it. That's very sad. There used to be a demon only for all the varieties of demons you could buy. But we can't use that starter set anymore, sadly. But let's just grab some Nurglings. You always get more Nurglings than you think you do. The box says it has 3, but those bases are overpacked. Just buy extra bases. They're like $2 and split your Nurglings up.
Oh.
You'll find infinite examples online how to do this. You will never get less than like 6 bases worth of Nurglings out of a box of Nurglings.
Okay, that's good to know.
It's a little hack that you just learn if you play demons.
And at the same time, like, it's always nice to have more Nurglings because, like, you can put those as basing material in other parts of your army once you continue forward, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, as a decoration on some models.
Yeah. And then I guess we can grab like a Beast of Nurgle because he's cute.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right.
The best 2 models from the demons, I believe, is the Beast of Nurgle and Horticulus Limax.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. We'll throw him in here too. Why not? If you like him, you like him. That's fine. It fits within the point value. He can go with his little Beast of Nurgle buddy, and then you'll probably end up buying like 4 more of them because they are the cutest thing. But yeah, that basically gives us our 500 points of allied demons then. So there you go. And now you can start going the demon direction, grab some plague bearers. They're pretty cheap to grab online, secondary market and stuff. Maybe grab some plague drones to have something a little more mobile. Obviously, Eric's going to say grab a Great Unclean One.
I like that.
It's very fair.
It has the same issues of like, here's one model. It's not quite Demon Prince, but it is like, oh, you're trying to put together a 500 point Chaos Demon list. Here's half of it in one model.
We're going to grab him, some Nurglings, and we've got like 100 points to spare. Actually, I think you have like 200 points to spare still.
Because Nurglings are cheap, but but it is one of those where it's like, it's probably not the right way to do it, but it is a way to do it. And if I was, I'd probably do that.
So that was 2,000 points of Death Guard and an extra 500 bonus points of Demons here as a bonus round of sorts for aspiring Death Guard players who might want to go the full Nurgle lineup.
Okay, so before we go by all that, is there any Death Guard models that are known to be a pain to assemble?
I don't know of any with Death Guard. Our local Death Guard player, I don't think he had any complaints Death Guard wise. He was shocked because his second army was Sisters, and they have several kits that are a pain in the ass, including Sisters of Battle, like the baseline kit.
The Fatted Bloat drone, the first thing that I thought was, oh, this might be a little bit hard to assemble, maybe. Because it has the turbines and looks like one contact point to the base.
So it is secretly on a leg, those draping cords. When you actually look at it as plastic, it's essentially a model with one leg, but it's a pretty secure contact point that grabs from the back of the model and the front of the model there up top under the face. And then it comes down to a single, basically big boot of it dragging on the ground, which is actually more of an impressive thing to talk about from a design standpoint, that they make it look like it's just a draping, floating monstrosity. But it's very securely put on the ground with a nice large contact point with those draping there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it does a pretty good job of being reasonably balanced. It's not like super...
It's not Wraiths and Necrons where there's springs. Top-heavy springs. What a funny unit design. Thanks, Necrons.
And I'm pretty sure that sprue has got like a good amount of like, here's a big piece that you put together with another big piece. And then, of course, it's Death Guard, so there's little tchotchkes that you put on top of and whatever, but like the core is like 4 pieces.
Oh, speaking about tchotchkes, you mentioned on a previous episode that you didn't know Grey Knights were hard to paint because they have too much tchotchke. I see some Death Guard models that maybe has this problem, like we mentioned the Lord of Contagion. He has a lot of stuff in his model.
Yeah, this is one of my regrets from our early attempt at a difficulty painting episode when we were talking about Death Guard, and I got corrected vehemently by our local Death Guard player that it is far harder to paint than it looks like, because a lot of people are like, haha, it's sloppy, therefore easy to make them look good. Which, if you were going like an enamel route or something, which you're probably not doing on your first army, that would be a great hack for this, to do like streak and grime and stuff if you want to go for a grimdark look.
It is possible, but like,
You're probably not doing that on your first army.
there's a lot of little baubles and...
Yeah, Typhus, for example, is a leader on the combat patrol, and he has some flies on his back. He has...
Well, he's got like a bunch of like skulls and...
Yeah, a lot of stuff going out of his armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even like Typhus, just the baseline Plague Marines have things like entire mouths on their plates and stuff.
That's the big one, is your battle line unit has stuff. They look great.
There's like not a single clean chest plate in this army that you just paint a color.
Right.
Which is true. It is a downside, but if you're set on Death Guard, you probably just know this is going to be something you'll deal with. Is it's going to be kind of a pain compared to other Space Marines. Probably not the worst army in the game, but it's a pain compared to alternatives that are in power armor.
Oh, you know something that I realized? I know you guys won't relate very much because you guys didn't play Hollow Knight.
Okay.
I just realized that many Death Guard models remind me of Hollow Knight's design of creatures, like those flies and the blisters.
Oh yeah. I've seen enough Hollow Knight design. I understand what you're talking about. I even think like the way certain Chaos, the way they do their eye shape is exactly, it reminds me of Hollow Knight's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? I always think of that too.
For example, the Glotticus has a big eye, or the Mephitic Blight Hauler have some big red eyes on the center. I just realized, I think I know why I like these guys now.
It's nice that the Combat Patrol has those things, so like you get that, you build it, you paint it, you'll know if you fucking hate it. Like, it'll become very obvious very quickly that, like, no, I don't want to ever paint Plague Marines again.
On the plus side, they're a more elite infantry than most. Even if you hate painting Plague Marines, 20 Plague Marines is a decent number. It's a sufferable number to get through, and you're probably not going to be playing too many more than that ever.
Yeah, it's not like Thermagants or Hormagants.
Yeah, you're not painting 100 of them to make a normal list.
Right.
At that point, you chose to do this to yourself.
So yeah, to go back to like your original thing of like, is there problematic kits? I don't think so, especially because most of the kits are fairly new. Like they were refreshed not too long ago. So you should be pretty good with like, you know, the manuals actually having instructions that make sense.
Well,
Roughly.
I'd never count on a GW manual having 0 errors. Let's put it that way.
It's not perfect, but it's not some of like from the 98 version of this thing, they had 2 pictures and none of it looks the same. You should be at a reasonable start level of like, the kits are going to be okay.
Now, for the most important question, how do I get these models in Brazil?
Crime. As with most things in Brazil.
So there is always the option of going the printed way.
Yeah, there's lots of good 3D printed Death Guard stuff, all that, if you wanted to go that route.
There are other ways to get into the hobby if finding GW actual models is that much of a difficulty. At the end of the day, this is a hobby. Don't worry too much about, oh, but I won't be able to play in this tournament because I don't have legal GW. It's like, well, you're just playing with your friends. Enjoy it.
As long as everyone you play with doesn't care, then there you go.
Yeah.
At the same time, like, also don't rush and feel like you have to buy all this at once and
No.
build all this at once. The point of this was to show breakpoints of, like, different points in your collecting sessions.
This is like a 2-year journey. If you're not you, Brad.
For some of us, it's a 20-minute trip to the store. For others, it's a 2-year-long journey. Most people probably fall into the latter category. If you host a podcast about 40K, you may be in the former category.
It's very possible you might be named Brad.
We have a very fun episode coming up.
Don't worry about rushing through it. This was a hobby. Yeah, it's a good idea to keep focus and do work on it kind of thing instead of just the pile of shame continues to grow kind of thing. But it's supposed to be fun. So
yeah,
this is a journey to be experienced. And this is kind of the path of least resistance that we have currently.
Yeah, the one piece is the models we collect along the way.
Yes.
Sure, exactly. That's a perfect way to wrap this up then. All right, if you're on YouTube pleasantries would be a big help. Also, we have to remind everyone that yes, we do have new merch. We've been like quickly selling it out recently, but I just realized we haven't really like talked about it. We were doing rush segments, but like I really want to shout out how good the art we got for these was. We went out and paid an artist to do this, and she did a wonderful job for us.
Yeah, there were like iterations of like we talked and said like, oh, this would be cool to do something like this, and then she came back and was like, it was wild how professional things can actually be done when you're paying money. And
yeah,
they turned out great. Really, they did.
So yeah, paintbrush liquor,
fishing for sixes.
Yeah, the Gone Fishing is wonderful. So those exist too. All of our old merch, beautiful as well. If you just want to rep our logo or whatever, we're probably still about 2 to 4 weeks out from being able to do objective markers again. On the plus side, AOS just announced this week their objective markers are going to 40K size. So we'll be just in time. Yeah, baby.
Yeah, positive thinking on that one.
But anyway, all of that would be helpful. We have a Patreon. That would be helpful. You know all the crap. We just have to shout it out. Money is slightly more important now than it was a few weeks ago for reasons that we don't want to get into.
Yeah. That's true.
Eric's had some bad weeks.
That's very true.
We thought I was going to have some bad weeks, and then Eric...
I beat you to it. Ha! First.
So, on that vague note, thank you everybody for joining along, and let's get out of here.
Sounds good.